Good morning. I was just looking out into the congregation, smiling behind my mask. It is good to see you this morning. Please stand as you're able and join me in the call to worship. If you are overwhelmed with the problems of this world, come and rest.
With open hands, I release my words.
If you are burdened with fear and anxiety, come and rest.
With an open mind, I listen to the words. You are my pillow.
If you are sad or joyful, hurt or healing, restless or calm, come and rest.
With an open heart, I surrender to compassion and kindness.
In the presence of the one whose radical love welcomes us home, again and again we worship.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here to speak with you today briefly. My name is Carrie Dow-Smith. I'm a pediatrician at Wake Med, and my friend Annika and I are here to speak to you about Host Homes, which is a program to try to address housing insecurity in our college students locally. On a daily basis, I work with families in poverty, trying to help families kind of break that cycle of seeing firsthand so many times the difficulties working in a front-end job, trying to raise children, trying to make ends meet, trying to make things better for the next generation. And one of the things so clearly that can help families pull out of that cycle is education. And so I'm always very excited to talk to my teens at their well-child checks about what they might do in the future, what might they do to be able to better themselves. And it's unfortunate that even low-income students who might have a good amount of financial aid and support from universities and loans and things still are really not able to make ends meet to have a safe housing situation. The cost of living, there aren't dorms available for every student, and the cost of living is such that financial aid isn't even enough to make ends meet. And through working with this group, I've heard firsthand some really difficult stories of students deciding between whether they can buy food or pay their rent, students living in their cars or showering in the gym or sleeping in the library, and really trying to meet their goals of finishing their education, but really struggling financially. So I'm excited to share with you and for Annika to share with you a solution that has been kind of brought forward in the community, and we appreciate Pullen's support in this.
So my name is Annika Sickink, and I am a staff member at NC State across the street. I'm also chair of the board of the Be Well Foundation, which is the nonprofit partner for the Host Home project. And what we are wanting to do to address housing insecurity among college students is match students experiencing college insecurity, or housing insecurity, with community members who have an extra space in their home. who may have a guest bedroom or an apartment attached to their home that may sit empty 50 weeks out of the year until they have family visit, and may be an opportunity for a student in crisis. This actually came out of some work. There was some research done at NC State that identified that back in 2018, about 10% of NC State students had experienced homelessness in the past year, at least one night where they had nowhere safe to stay. And that survey was repeated during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it had gone up. So 15% of students during the pandemic had experienced homelessness. That's thousands of students in our community right here, not to mention all of the other campuses in Wake County, Wake Tech, Shaw, St. Aug, Meredith, etc. So there was a group that came together to brainstorm solutions, and the solution that the students themselves said that they were most interested in was this idea of host homes, which has been used successfully around the country to serve homeless youth. This would be the first time that it would be applied in a college setting to serve university students. So we have a steering committee that is working on making this program a reality. We are putting together plans for exactly what it's going to look like. We're raising funds to be able to hire a staff person to support this program and make sure that students are well matched to a host family that's going to be a safe and affirming environment for them to stay temporarily, to recruit hosts. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping that this congregation may consider, is that if you find yourself in that position where you have space in your home that you might be able to open up, or have already done that. I know I've had a chance to talk to a few people who have had some experience doing exactly that, is providing a safe space for young people. This may be an avenue to do that with the support of a program that can make sure that everybody is well matched, well supported, and intervene if there are any causes for concerns along the way. So there's a lot more that we could tell you, but I want to respect our time this morning. But quickly, a couple of things. We're very excited to partner with the congregation. Moving forward, we are going to be hopefully moving into an office space here in the building once we have a staff member. And we are also hoping to continue to partner if there are folks who are interested in being part of our planning committee, if you might consider becoming a host as we're getting ready to start that training process, or any other way that you can think of to share your time or talents. We are very open to chatting with you. So myself, Carrie, Dr. Mary Haskett, we are all going to be available after the service, so please feel free to come talk to us to learn more. Share your email or phone number if you're willing, so that we can follow up and continue to engage with you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
As we enter our time of prayer, we certainly give thanks for the host program and for partners within the community that come together and brainstorm to find solutions for the needs of our community. This morning we acknowledge the 5th anniversary of the ministry of Brian Crisp here at Pullen. For our staff, we mark these anniversaries every 5 years, and we will celebrate him later on in the service. This is not a 5th year anniversary, but Ophelia had celebrated her 7th birthday yesterday, and so we celebrate with her. She and Eve have their grandmother Naomi with them today. In our concerns, we acknowledge the death of Elias Mapunga. Elias and his wife Anna have run the Kutinda Children's Home since 2008. This was a project that Pullen supported along with Millbrook, and Elias visited us actually here at Pullen in the early 2000s, and so we hold Anna and his children along with the 26 children living at the home in our prayers. We continue to pray for our friends in the Republic of Georgia as they face religious and political upheaval over LGBTQ rights. And we continue in prayer for our friends in Cuba, many people battling COVID without access to vaccines and medicine. We pray for Isabel and her family, for Carlos Manuel, who's been admitted to the hospital with his oldest child, for Arianes, was hospitalized last week and has now been transferred to another hospital. The same is true for Maylin. We pray for Maylin's child as well, and others who are recovering at home, Juana Roman, Diara, Ildamis, and her mother, Gladys. We continue also to pray for Wanda and Orestes and other church leaders as they try to serve their community in this challenging time amid political tensions. God, in the midst of suffering and cruelty, we long for a loving embrace, a place where we can find shelter, where we can find security, safety. In you, we find someone who not only understands us, but treasures us. When others seek to make the way hard for us, in you we encounter one who paves the way for the provision we need to flourish. Your generosity toward us is like refreshing waters. You have accompanied us through the most challenging periods in our lives, consoled us in grief, and nudged us again toward the light. You have sustained us in scarcity. You've brought us through battles, bruised but still unconquered. You've tended to our wounds and made us at the same time balm for the wounded around us. In you, we find a very present help and an intangible hope for the days ahead. In you we remain, all of us, the sheep of your pasture. Amen. The gospel reading this morning. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. When they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed about that whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed.
When the poor ones who have nothing still are giving, when the thirsty pass the cup, water to share, when the wounded offer others strength and healing, we see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way. When compassion gives the suffering consolation, when expecting brings to birth hope that was lost, when we choose love, not the hatred all around us, we see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way. When our spirits like a chalice brim with gladness, when our voices full and clear sing out the truth, when our longings free from envy seek the humble, we see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way. When the goodness poured from heaven fills our dwelling, when the nations work to change war into peace, when the stranger is accepted as our neighbor, we see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way.
What beautiful singing. Your voice is singing that My Shepherd was just so calming and beautiful. Thank you. It's wonderful to have a choir back in the congregation. And Maggie, your voice always lifts us to a higher place. Thank you. Oh, great. Now we have to worry about a potentially devastating moon wobble. This was a headline this past week on CNN. The story warned that a moon wobble in orbit may lead to record flooding on Earth. Did you see the story? Anybody see the story? Yeah. This headline, along with others, detailing the chaos in Haiti over the assassination of their president, the political and religious violence in the streets of the Republic of Georgia over LGBTQIA rights, and the death of a journalist there reporting on the violence who was beaten to death by Christians, the suffering and unrest in Cuba, the bootleg fire, the largest wildfire in the United States this year that has scorched more than 240,000 acres in 10 days, that devastating flood in Germany, the rise of COVID cases in all 50 states, the DACA being ruled illegal by a Texas judge, lawmakers and activists being arrested for protecting voting rights in this country. In Texas, lawmakers fleeing their state for the protection of voting rights. It is hard to not be overwhelmed by all the suffering and violence and injustice and need in our world right now. And lay these headlines alongside our own personal ones, and it's hard not to be overcome by the brokenness of humanity. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest for a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. Like those disciples, we too, Shalice, have our list of all that we have done and taught and are doing. Many of the disciples at Pullen have given and are giving hours and hours of their day fighting climate change, advocating for solar panels, outfitting our church with recycling systems, writing lawmakers advocating for sustainable energy sources, planning wonderful education programs about climate change to get the message out to as many people as possible. Anything that might reverse the harm we have done and are doing to our planet. Other disciples here at Pullen are organizing and protesting, standing up and speaking out for voting rights, LGBTQIA rights, federal laws that would mandate a living wage for all workers, well-funded education programs for all children, health care for everyone, in short, basic human rights for all people. And yet other disciples here at Pullen are giving of their time to feed the hungry and to advocate for affordable housing and set up programs for college students who are trying to secure an education for their future but are having to couch surf and sleep in cars and libraries and shower in gyms because of housing security. And still, other disciples here at Pullen are busy fighting racism and all forms of xenophobia. Yes, the list is long and tiring and sometimes simply, Serena, overwhelming. When Jesus says to the disciples, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest for a while," we finally can take a deep breath of relief. And just as Jesus offers the invitation to get away and rest for just a minute, more needs arise. And they went away in a boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. And he, Jesus, went ashore and saw a great crowd. And he had compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. As this scene unfolds beyond the lectionary selected verse of 34, the wearied disciples encouraged Jesus to send the people away. Their reasoning being, these folks have got to be hungry. They've been here for days. They need to eat. Tell them to leave for a little bit and go get something to eat so we can rest. But Jesus said to his disciples, you know this story, you give them something to eat. And thus, if we were to read all of chapter 6 of Mark, we would encounter the story of the 5 loaves and 2 fish feeding the crowd. If we stopped here with this story, we could have a spirited debate, as we did in worship planning this week amongst the staff, about what kind of role model Jesus is when it comes to resting and having compassion for oneself. He invites the disciples to rest, but in a quick change of heart, when he sees the needs of the people about him, it appears that he rescinds the invitation and ask them to keep on caring for the people's needs. His compassion, it would seem, outweighed his need and his disciples' need for rest. Now, we could debate that for a long time, but I don't think that is what this story is about. A debate over resting versus not resting, taking time for oneself versus giving everything you have for others to the point of exhaustion. Surely, Jesus wants us to rest and care for ourselves. But as I see it, at the heart of this pericope, a part of a story within a larger story, is the relationship between compassion and need. For it seems to me that the two are connected. So I want to ask you a question. What do you need? What do you need to feel safe and whole and fulfilled? To feel like you are making a difference in this world? To feel like you belong? That you have a place and a purpose in this world? What do you need? And what needs are you bringing with you? It seems like a simple question, but in reality, it can be quite complicated to answer. And yet, it may be one of the most important questions we ask ourselves. Why? Why do I say that may be one of the most important questions we ask ourselves? Because when we take the time and make the effort to figure out what we need, what we really need, something begins to shift for us. When we know and take responsibility for our own needs, a door of compassion opens that allows us then to take in the needs of others and to be authentically available to those unique needs. Our compassion for others, I believe, is directly proportionate to our ability to see and meet our own needs. Now, the danger in this teaching and the trap we humans usually fall into is that unless we examine and know our own needs, then we project them out onto the world and onto others. And that, my friends, is not compassion. For it is not even about the other. It's just a misguided attempt to get what we need, the results that we need, which result in unintentional manipulation and deceit. The trouble is this process of discerning our needs and the needs of others. This is tricky business. We often don't realize that we are projecting, particularly when we learn these patterns as young ages from our families of origins, as I would assume most of us did. One clue, though, is when I think that another's needs are the same as mine. I've come to learn that this is a tip-off to projection. So when I realize that I'm thinking someone else needs what I need, I try to get clearer about my own needs and make sure that need is being met. And then, this is what opens up the door of my heart to see the needs of another. Whatever those unique needs might be, not just my projection of what those needs are. And it is that relationship, that connection, that is the connection between compassion for someone else and need for yourself. So let me give you an example. Some years ago, when I recognized my own need to speak up for my rights as a same-gender loving person, I had allowed everyone else to do that for a number of years, for most of my life. But in a moment, I recognized my own need to speak up for myself. And what I learned in that moment was that my heart opened up to the needs of others and their rights. Others who are discriminated against for the color of their skin, and to my fellow human beings who are being exploited in a capitalistic society by minimum wages that keep poor people poor. And to my Muslim friends who are demonized because of their religion. And to my neighbors who don't have access to health care because of an exclusive marketplace that is based on profit over providing care for people. At rallies that I have spoken at over the past 15 years, I've rarely spoken out about LGBTQIA issues. Not because they're not important to me. They are deeply important to me. But recognizing my own needs opened my heart to have compassion for the needs of others and to speak out on their behalf. Don't you imagine that Jesus was just as tired as those disciples? Don't you imagine that he too needed that little bit of time to get away all by himself and rest? Don't you imagine that he wanted more than anyone to get in that boat and float away and just be alone for a while? But he saw the people. He saw their needs. And he knew that his own need for rest would and could be met later. And so, with an open heart, we're told, he had compassion and he stayed. And out of that place of compassion and an open heart, he pressed on. And he invited his disciples to press on too. This week, I was texting with Marcus about the crisis in the Republic of Georgia. I asked him how he was doing in the midst of the violence and the upheaval in his country. And he wrote this back: "I'm somewhat tired and broken, but not beyond repair. I am determined to fight darkness back. There are all sorts of reasons why we should be disheartened, but we are neither the first nor the last to experience setback. We may lose many battles, but we shall win the war for a fairer world." Those words kept resonating in my mind. I'm somewhat tired and broken, but not beyond repair. This, my people, as I hear it, is a statement of compassion. Compassion for self and compassion for others. To feel tired and broken is human. And compassion is also about trusting that all that is overwhelming us in this world is not beyond repair. It is this kind of compassion that gives us the strength to keep on seeing the needs of our fellow human beings and to show up for those thousands of college students who are trying to better their lives, but don't even have a place to lay their head down at night. Even in our tiredness and brokenness, we are called to meet the needs of others. Our lectionary text ends with those last 4 verses of chapter 6, and that is where I want to end this morning. Listen to those closing verses again. When they had crossed over, they came to land and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed about the whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak. And all who touched it were healed. And they begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak. Compassion to me is when we are the living fringe. We are not Jesus, but we are the living fringe that still carries the power to heal. We are the living fringe that can offer healing when we hear that 10% to 15% of college students in this area experience housing insecurity. We are the living fringe that can offer healing to our racist nation. We are the living fringe that can offer healing to those who are marginalized and oppressed by systems that privilege some, most of us, and exclude others. We are the living fringe that can offer healing by accompanying those who are struggling with loneliness and depression and fear and anxiety and addiction. We are the living fringe that can offer healing through the sacred act of friendship and radical acceptance and radical welcome. We, my friends, are the living fringe. Jesus is no longer walking this earth with us. We are His presence now. We are the living fringe. Again and again, Jesus sent His disciples out with the power to heal and to show compassion to those who are hurting, feed the people, heal the sick, house the homeless, welcome the stranger, visit the sick and those, Laura, who are in prison, literally and figuratively. We get tired for certain. We feel broken at times, and we sometimes feel disheartened and overwhelmed. And those are the very moments when we need to reach out and touch the fringe of another. And if the church, my friends, is to be anything in this world, it is to be the living fringe. Because we hold that power to heal the broken, to befriend the lonely and the stranger. We, the church, and we as individuals are to be the living fringe to those who reach out to us. How low are we willing to let our hem drop? How far are we willing to let our fringe out to show compassion and to be there for others? Jesus has imparted that kind of power to us. I know it's hard to believe, but we hold that kind of power. The question is, what will we do with it? Will we simply remain overwhelmed, or will we be the living fringe, extending compassion and healing when we see the crowds and we see their needs?
And where is Brian Crisp? Would you join me, please? Recently, the Personnel Committee revised its policy regarding the recognition of service of our staff. One change was to begin the recognition after 5 years of service rather than the previous 10 years. Another change was to create a system whereby service, whether full-time or part-time, administrative or ministerial, is awarded equally for each 5-year increment of employment at Pullen. This brings me to the reason that Brian Crisp and I stand here in this moment today. Next Sunday, July 25th, will mark Brian's 5th anniversary as a member of Pullen's staff. He began his work with us first as community ministry and now in the expanded role of Minister of Missions and Adult Education. In that capacity, Brian coordinates, guides, and supports individuals and groups in community ministry programs and international partnerships, as well as adult Sunday groups. He staffs at least 4 councils and groups and is the staff liaison to the Hope Center and is the face of Pullen in the wider community ministries such as Oak City Cares and One Wake. Brian's plate is full. Brian, the Personnel Committee is especially grateful for your presence and work among us and with us. Here are a few things that church members who engage directly with you have said this week. Lisa Graberick said, 2 of Brian's gifts stand out to me. First, in addition to generously lowering the average age of our Exploring the Bible Sunday Groups faculty, Brian raised the bar for lively, energetic teaching. Anyone who can unearth both wicked wit and theological depth from a fuzzy picture of an ancient Egyptian pot is a mighty fine teacher. Second, I learned from Brian that my requests for Zoom meetings could take on a life of their own. Every request for a coordinating council Zoom meeting was met with momentous fanfare and playful humor, and subsequently led to multiple exchanges just for trying to get one Zoom meeting link. Anyone who can make it fun to request a Zoom meeting is quite a fine treasure to have on board. Brian is a gift to Pullen, for whom I am very grateful. Nancy Bradley said, working with Brian has been a joy. He has been incredibly supportive in packing the snack bags for the Roundtable Ministry, particularly in working with a way to find a way to do this safely during COVID before we had vaccinations to protect us. Brian has also been supportive and encouraging most recently while I have been trying to find a way to get medicines to the church in Matanzas. He has been in contact with the church in Cuba to keep them informed about what is happening here at Pullen and to let them know they are not alone. This contact has been much appreciated by our sister church. Finally, I'd like to say how appreciative I am of Brian's offering to take me to medical procedures during COVID. I know he gets pulled in 1,000 directions, sometimes all at once, but he always smiles and is pleasant when dealing with others. And Jan Crouch said, expanding the services of Roundtable would not have happened without the dedication of Brian Crisp. His compassionate care, thoughtful attention to the details of living, his patience, even when he doesn't want to be, and his sharing of his many gifts with everyone are part of the reasons that I and all of those who have volunteered at Roundtable over the last 5 years recognize and appreciate Brian. Thank you, friend, for loving all God's children. And I know from participating with Brian in the pre-pandemic Wiley tutoring program that he is somewhat like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, who we know from medieval folklore could charm children with his melodic flute. While I never heard him playing a flute, I did observe him enchant the children of our group with his enjoyment of their silly jokes, recognition of their need for attention, and important for their development, and that was more important for their development than a 30-minute phonics or writing lesson. Unlike the Pied Piper, he leads the children with light and love and a listening ear. It was a joy to witness, and I look forward to the time we can resume that program. Brian, please accept this recognition of your work, knowing that it is a mere token of our gratitude for you as a member of staff, as a friend, and as an example of how to live and move through the world as Jesus taught us to do. This card reads, "Hold on to your realness, trust your own words, believe in the difference you make." May it be so.
Once upon a time, first of all, I want to say thank you for those wonderful words, and thank you for all your love. I say this all the time. There is only one church in the world for which I'm fitted, and it's this church. And so Lori Cohn said something to me this week that has really stuck with me, and she said, "I practice receiving support from realms invisible, and if I don't see your face, always feel your support." So thank you. Here's to another 5 years.
Brian, you truly are an example of the compassion that we read about in today's scripture, and you are the living fringe. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be a colleague and a friend of yours. Turn to someone and say, "I may be broken and disheartened, but not beyond repair." With those words and hugs and exchanges, may you prepare yourselves now as we leave to go into the world to be the living fringe. I want to welcome any visitor that is here with us. I see this lovely couple that I married, I don't know, how many months ago now? 4. Just in a beautiful ceremony, and it's always good to see folks that I make that connection with. It's like Larry says, it's always good when the children and youth grow up and become adults and come back and can be a part of this community and offer their gifts as Maggie has done this morning. Wasn't that just beautiful? Yeah, amazing. I know there are other visitors here with us. Ophelia's grandma is here, Naomi, helping her celebrate her 7th birthday. And I wish I knew every visitor's name here today, but I want to make sure you feel welcome and that someone speaks to you and that you know you are always, always welcome here at Pullen Church. Hear now this benediction as we depart. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness in the world. All things break, and all things can be mended. Not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go. Love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you. Go in peace.
When compassion gives the suffering consolation. When expecting brings to birth hope that was lost. When we choose love, not the hatred all around us, we see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way.
Janice, thank you. That was beautiful. Love that.